So, yesterday, Matthew and I popped down to East San Jose in search of some really good classic hot dogs. Now, I have been recently made aware that there is significant disagreement about what topping should go on a classic hot dog. In fact, this was something that was hotly debated in our practice voting rounds at the General Convention of the Episcopal Church at the end of June. And you know what? Our deputation was seated right next to the Chicago deputation. And let me tell you, they had strong opinions on this matter. Now, lucky for Matthew and I, Mark's Hot Dogs in Allen Rock in East San Jose does not take sides on this matter. Instead, they offer a full range of toppings on their menu. So yesterday, I decided to give the Chicago style a go, because I've heard so much about how it is the one and only and right way to eat a hot dog. So I went with onions, pickles, and those nice big chunky tomato slices. Matthew, on the other hand, he decided to go with the more, shall we say, common approach to hot dogs, which is ketchup, relish, and onions. Well, you will be glad to know that both of them were fantastic. And we shared bites back and forth. And even better, there's more to try there, so we're going to have to go back sometime. Because they also offer things like sauerkraut and chili. You can have it all if you want. What drew the two of us to explore this particular hot dog stand was in fact its, shall we say, quirky architecture. Now, this particular hot dog stand, he's laughing. It's ridiculous. It looks like a giant orange. The building is literally shaped like an orange with a door on the front. And according to the Atlas Obscura, which if you're not familiar with it, it's this great online trove of like the quirky and weird things that you can see in your journeys anywhere in the world, in fact. But they have written on their site that this particular style of building, this giant orange hot dog stand, was originally part of a whole chain of hot dog stands that proliferated across the highways of California. Kind of their heyday was in the 1930s, was when they first started. I don't know, has anyone seen a giant orange somewhere in their travels?
No.
Well, anyway, apparently it was a huge thing. And the company was called Giant Orange. Why not? And they served their signature dish of hot dogs along with, guess what? That's right, orange juice. I never knew orange juice with hot dogs was a thing, but apparently they made it that. The interesting thing about the 1930s is that road trips were kind of a new opportunity in the 1930s. So the idea that this particular entrepreneur had is that wherever you went, whenever hunger strikes, you could just make a quick stop, sate your appetite, and then, you know what, hit the road again. No fuss. Prior to what was, in fact, at that time, a kind of general proliferation of fast food chains across all kinds of places in that era of the early 20th century, most travelers had to carry their own food when they went on a journey. They had to pack it up, they had to stick it in their bags, and, you know, prior to the car, traveling meant getting on a train or, I don't know, getting behind some sort of horse-drawn wagon or carriage, or possibly even walking on your own 2 feet. Now, the travelers of America had food establishments like the Giant Orange sprinkled liberally along the highways, and there they are, around the next curve, serving up hot and expensive staples for motorists in every little town down along the way. And Matthew pointed out there was also this idea of making the buildings look like the food that you were serving. That was also kind of a fun thing. Apparently they have taco-shaped buildings with the taco chains, and then, who knows, banana-shaped buildings, and giant oranges. There was a word for it, but I don't remember what it was. But cool, right? I just imagine, kind of like all of a sudden, manna is falling from heaven, right? In the form of hot dogs and hamburgers and orange juice. Now, I'm not sure that hot dog stands are exactly what we mean when we pray, "Give us this day our daily bread." But given that everyone needs to eat, in fact, several times a day for every day of our lives, you would think that we would have a greater appreciation for this basic little miracle that food is, for our kind of time and place in history, more readily available and conveniently available than probably at any other time that humanity's walked this earth. And I think maybe if we didn't just take that for granted, we might place more priority on making sure that everyone, and I mean everyone, had access to this unprecedented abundance. Now, the unconscionably high rate of food insecurity in the context of this incredible abundance isn't precisely what I'm focusing on in today's sermon, but I can't dig into some of the complicated ways that Jesus is using bread imagery in this reading from John's Gospel without first acknowledging that literal abundance and real hunger exist in ways that people in Jesus' days could not have imagined, given how easy it is, quote, to get food in our time. See, for Jesus' audience, they also had huge inequities in the distribution of food. But underpinning all of that was a profound vulnerability in the entire food supply system. I mean, everything, the whole crop for a whole season or maybe years running could be wiped out through drought or disease. Subsistence agriculture systems do not have the same kind of resilience, but we just assume, if it doesn't grow here, we can just bring it in from, I don't know, South America or, the other side of the world. And they didn't have that. So I think you can see why, having just experienced the miraculous feeding of the 5,000, because that's what comes just before this, and we read that last week, but it kind of, that experience of Jesus feeding 5,000 people underpins this entire conversation that we're in about the bread of life, and we're going to be in for a couple weeks running. But you can kind of see why that crowd that experienced that would then go on to chase down Jesus and find out, when is our next meal being served? And then, the one after that, and the one after that, and the one after that. Because, one, you need more than one. These folks, they're clear that ultimately they owe their daily bread to God, who alone provides what is needed to sustain life. Therefore, Jesus, he must in fact have a direct line to God, because why else would he be able to provide food for so many? Jesus turns around, and he's not, I think, taking away this need from them. I think he in fact understands it and acknowledges it. He must do, because he fed them. But he also says, you know what? You can think bigger than this. You can think and expect more from me. and from God. Because, yep, I can provide you with food. But what if there is more to hunger than just where you get your next meal from? What if, in fact, knowing God through me, through Jesus, fills people in ways that they can barely imagine? That's the challenge that Jesus lays before them. I think it doesn't say this, but what I hear coming out of the crowd is kind of a resounding, huh? Because they're not keeping up with Jesus in this. And I agree, Jesus is being a little mysterious here. They keep getting stuck on the literal meaning of what Jesus offers. And can we blame them? Because food that never perishes, what a great offer, right? I can see why it was a great deal to them, and they're gonna hang on to that piece, food that never perishes. You can just hear them saying, don't confuse us, Jesus. Just tell us what we need to do to get this food that never perishes. Well, Jesus kind of turns it around on them again and says, you don't have to do anything. That comes through God. Trust God. Trust what God is doing here in me, and that's enough. But it's not easy to be told you don't have to do anything. Have you ever been in that situation? You're like, oh, there's nothing that you can really do. And you want to know what it is. So they just want to be clear. Yeah, that's all great, Jesus, but make sure that you keep giving us this bread from heaven every morning. Just like God did when he rained manna down in the wilderness. They don't want the breakfast schedule to get interrupted with these high ideas of all of the other ways that God is feeding us spiritually. They'll be with Jesus all the way, but bread every morning, they want it. Jesus sets them straight, though. God provided manna, not Moses. And God provides bread from heaven that gives life to the world. God has provided bread from heaven that gives life to the world, and God is providing bread from heaven that gives life to the world. How do you think that could be? They're not there with it. And Jesus is being super subtle. I get the sense he's kind of playing with them a little bit, because they're still missing the point. All I can see is Jesus being drowned out by choruses. Yeah, Jesus, just keep it coming. They say it. Sir, give us this bread always. Give us this bread always. It seems like they're just kind of one step behind Jesus the whole way through this conversation. Food that never perishes. Jesus is not talking about a lifetime supply of Twinkies and Clif Bars. He's put it out to them. I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. So you're going to have to wait till next week to find out what they do with that. This is a journey. We will be with this passage, I think 3 or 4 more weeks. And I think we can give this crowd some slack here. I mean, can you blame them for being so focused on where their next meal is coming from that they initially completely missed this deeper spiritual truth about who Jesus is and what is the fullness of what Jesus is offering to them? And I have to say, us too, we may have the unprecedented ability to assume a consistently reliable food system. But I have to say, if we're honest, the very fact that given that system, the fact that we're still failing at sharing that abundance equitably with all, so that all may have life, I think that points to the fact that maybe we have some work to do here too, and that we don't yet fully get what Jesus has been saying to us either. And I think it's okay that we leave with more questions today than answers, because I think we are still on this journey of figuring this out. I mean, Jesus, he goes on explaining what he means to his audience for the entire rest of the 6th chapter of John's Gospel. And like I said, we will be working our way through that for the next remainder of August of Sundays. So here's what I think we can reliably take with us to ponder this week from what we've been given, this piece of the conversation. First, I think that we can be assured God provides. God has always provided. This is not something new. God provides. Second, I think we can carry with us the idea that God provides what we need to live, whether that's literal food for the journey, or whether it's a way forward that calls us towards the fullness of life, the fullness of peace, the fullness of love, the fullness of judge, and the fullness of compassion that resides in all humanity, each and every one of us. It's like this set of gifts that we're still figuring out how to open, right? We're still figuring out how to open that. And all that comes from God. Finally, I think we can go forth today and ponder this idea that Jesus is like our manna, raining down from heaven. Because Jesus is how God is with us, giving us what we need each and every day. And Jesus is also how we follow the road that leads us towards abundant life in this world and in all of its fullness, always and for everyone. So the question I think we should be asking ourselves today, at this point in the conversation, is what exactly are we asking for when we pray, give us this day our daily bread? Give us this day our daily bread. Is it enough? Are we thinking big enough when we realize we are asking this question of God? Because you know what? I think God has so much more to offer, right? So much. We can be fed, and we can feed each other at the same time. We can let God's abundance overflow in us and through us, just like Jesus has shown us how to do that. And you know what? I think that will transform us and our whole society in ways that we can scarcely imagine are possible. It will in fact feel like a miracle, don't you think? So what do we need to do? I think we trust God. We trust that God is present and active in the person of Jesus, and you know what? That means we'll get there. We will get there, because it's a journey, after all. I mean, we could call it a road trip if we want. But I think that we can count on there being all sorts of sustenance provided for us along the way. So, ketchup or mustard? I don't think we have to make a choice. In fact, think so much bigger.